So welcome to another terrific program at the Merowitz Center. Thanks for joining us. My name is Laura Bryant. This is part one of a two-part series about Social Security. Tonight, we will hear about the when and how, a great introduction for anyone who's thinking about applying for benefits in the near future. Part two, focusing on tips, resources, and fraud prevention, will be held next week at 1:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday, March 26th. Here today to introduce our guest speaker is Sheila Holm, the Community Outreach Director for the local AARP-St. Louis office. We are always happy to partner with AARP, so please help me welcome Sheila as we kickstart today's presentation. Sheila, it's nice to see you again.
Great to see you too, Laura, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. So as Laura indicated, this is Social Security When and How, brought to you by the Merowitz Center, and we're thrilled to be a part of it. As Laura indicated, my name is Sheila Holm. I'm with AARP Missouri, and I'm based in the St. Louis region. I have the distinct privilege of working with the Merowitz Center on several projects, this virtual program on Social Security being one of them. Make sure to check out the wealth of in-person and virtual opportunities they offer at merowitzcenter.org. And before I introduce our expert for this presentation on Social Security, I would be remiss if I didn't encourage you to check out the amazing resources AARP has to offer on many topics, including Social Security. I think you'll be amazed at the tools and resources available on our website at aarp.org/Social Security. Without further delay, it's my great pleasure to introduce David Seymour. David is the Senior Public Affairs Specialist for Region 7 of the Social Security Administration. He began his federal service as a congressional aide, then later joined the Social Security Administration in the Chicago region. In 2016, David relocated to Kansas City to serve as a technical training instructor for new Social Security Administration employees nationwide. His current duties in the Regional Public Affairs Office include serving as a liaison for congressional offices, assisting with media inquiries, and promoting public awareness and understanding of the programs Social Security administers. David also serves as a mentor to Social Security employees and other young professionals through City Year and the Mid-America LGBT Chamber of Commerce. He received his Bachelor of Arts in Spanish and Latin American Studies from Earlham College. This opened the door to exciting international travels, teaching Spanish language and Latin dance, want to see those moves, in community and academic settings, and other meaningful experiences in the public sector. David ultimately received his Master of Public Affairs from Indiana University and soon thereafter embarked on a rewarding career with Social Security Administration. So welcome, David. We're so thrilled to have you.
Well, thank you, Sheila. I don't know who that guy is, but I'm going to do the best I can with Social Security information here today. Thanks for sharing those details about me. That it's always interesting. I think when you hear a bio about yourself, you're like, wait a minute, did all that really happen? Am I old enough for all of that kind of stuff to have happened? Right? You know. So it's really good to be here, not only with you today, but of course, at the request with the Merowitz Center, right? Laura and I have been discussing and planning for this for months. So it's nice to finally be together and to make this a reality. So in that vein, I am going to go ahead and get my slides up here so that we can get this show on the road. And I want to make sure when they come up, very good. Laura, is everything looking good? Like we practiced? Okay, great. Wonderful. So on this opening slide, you see a little bit of everyone, and that's very intentional, right? Because Social Security really is there at various points along this journey called life. Of course, today our conversation is going to be focused on mostly the retirement and survivor aspect of the house, but disability benefits are also another topic, right, of interest when it comes to Social Security. Social Security cards, when a baby is first born. I mean, so there's many points of connection along the journey here. But of course, like I said, today we're going to kind of focus on that retirement and survivor side of the house. And so what's kind of our agenda today? What are we really going to be talking about? Of course, we're going to talk about retirement benefits. So the basics, right? How you become eligible for retirement benefits, but then also how your benefits are calculated, when you should file, right? I'm not going to give any personal guidance today, right? But giving you some things to think about when you're trying to make that decision of when to file. We'll also talk about survivor benefits, right? We don't like to think about death, but we all know that it happens at some point. And so we want you to understand what that might mean in terms of Social Security benefits. Then we'll also talk about some other things that may impact when you choose to file for benefits. WEP or GPO, I'm going to kind of leave you in suspense as to what those acronyms are about. Okay, well, I'll be covering those. But we'll also talk about earnings limits, meaning do you plan to work and receive benefits? Okay. We'll also talk a little bit about taxation, right? Uncle Sam is always interested in how much income you're receiving, and we want you to understand when your benefits may be taxable. At that point, after we kind of cover those things, we'll move into a discussion about Medicare, right? Helping you understand how you become eligible for Medicare, but also what your filing options are, right? There's lots of sometimes fear and misinformation out there as it relates to Medicare. So we'll cover some of those items, and then we'll round out our time together today by talking about your My Social Security account. Hopefully, most of you have already created your account. You've been in there. Maybe you got in there before, our event here today to kind of refresh your memory and look at things. But if you haven't, that's quite all right. We'll talk about what it means to create that account so that you can have access to your information. And of course, at the end, we'll have time for Q&A. I'll probably stop just a little bit before we go into Medicare to see what questions there may be as well. Okay. So before I get into the meat of today's presentation, of course, a short disclaimer, pretty much to say that, of course, what I'm sharing here today is current, what the information I'm sharing is current and real, right? But sometimes our policies change, right? And that's why we really encourage folks to regularly visit our website, or their My Social Security account for up-to-date information. So when we're talking about Social Security, hopefully most of you know and are aware that when we're looking at retirement, Social Security is not the only element. Hopefully not your only cookie in the cookie jar. I like to use a cookie jar analogy, It's not your only cookie in the cookie jar, but it is an important one. It's a foundational one. And that's kind of how you see this kind of stairs here, the stairway to retirement. Social Security is really meant to be that foundational step that you can count on, right? And understand, and it is a very large part of most individuals' retirement income. But hopefully you're learning about other pension opportunities that you may have, savings and investments, and perhaps other income as you move into retirement. And so retirement, right? As you're moving into retirement, hopefully you're going to have as much fun as these ladies are having here on the slide, maybe even more, right? And so when we're talking about how you qualify for retirement benefits, right? Social Security is a pay-to-play system, right? So you earn credits when you work and pay Social Security taxes, and you need at least 40 credits, which is about 10 years of work, and you have to be at least age 62 or older, right? So this is just the bare minimum of what it takes to be insured for a retirement benefit. Okay. Here in 2024, the value of a credit is $1,730 in gross earnings. And you can earn a maximum of 4 credits per year. Right. So this year in 2024, if you already earned at least $6,920, or you plan to earn that here in the year, you will be insured, meaning you will have received, you earned your maximum number of credits for the year. Of course, any dollar amount that you earn above these basic amounts is what goes to increasing your benefit amount, which is what we'll take a look at here shortly. Before I move on to the next slide, I just want to point out on this slide and some of the ones that you'll see coming, you'll see links to portions of our website that do a deeper dive into some of the topics. Make sure you make a note of those, right, in case you want to learn more about a particular topic or a subject that I'm covering, okay? So kind of that leads us to our next question, right? How do we actually determine your benefit amount, right? Sometimes there's lots of theories out there about this, but what we're looking at first and foremost are the earnings that have been reported to Social Security, right? So in step 1, what we're doing is we're taking all of the earnings that have been reported to Social Security, and we are adjusting them for changes in wage levels over time. What does that really mean? Sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo, right? What that means is we're taking a look at all of your earnings and we are indexing them, which means bringing them up to the value of today's dollar, right? So that means we're always using indexed earnings. So for example, let's say you were making whatever good money was back in 2000, right? Or 2010 even, right? If we just use the raw dollar value, you know, that was reported at that time, everybody's benefit amounts would be significantly lower, right, than what you see on your Social Security statement. So we're using indexed earnings, right? Then in step 2, we're finding the monthly average of your 35 highest earnings years, right? Not your last 3, not your highest 3, or, you know, some other kind of formula that might be for an employer pension or something like that. We're looking at your 35 highest earnings years. If you don't have 35 years of earnings, then we add zeros, right? So that we are using 35 years in the computation. Okay. And so the result is the average index monthly earnings, right? Kind of that result there just kind of sums up all of what we did in step 1 and step 2. And that's the starting point by which you see the benefit amount that you see on your Social Security statement. Okay, so that's how we calculate your benefit. Now we lead to kind of like the $1 million question, so to say, and that is, what is the best age, right, to start receiving Social Security retirement benefits? Before we discuss anything on this slide, the real answer to that question is, it depends. That sounds evasive, that sounds vague, but it does depend on a lot of factors. Your health at the time when you choose to file, maybe your other financial obligations, lots of things, right? There's lots of things to consider. Your other income. Of course, we don't have time to look at all of those things here today, but what we're going to look at on this slide is the relationship between your age at the time that you choose to file and the benefit amount that you lock in at that time. Okay? So we learned just a few moments ago that the earliest you can file for a benefit is age 62, right, for your retirement benefit. And so that is the earliest point in time. If you chose to file at that time, your benefit would receive the maximum reduction. And in this chart, we see if this individual filed at 62, they would receive $1,400 a month. But for every month that you wait after age 62, your benefit amount goes up a little bit. we see that increase represented here on a yearly basis, right? So you can see that climb. And in this example, we have an individual whose full retirement age is 67. So if they wait until 67 to start their benefit, they would receive $2,000. That is the maximum benefit payable on their record. Okay? But I know you all are seeing some dollar amounts after age 67, right? Don't get it twisted. I'm going to explain to you what those are, right? So if you wait until after your full retirement age to receive your benefit, you receive what's called delayed retirement credit, or DRC. Right? We like acronyms. Lots of government systems like acronyms, right? So DRCs, or delayed retirement credits, are payable to you simply for waiting after your full retirement age to start your benefit. You earn a credit for every month after your full retirement age, and we see the increase of those credits here represented on a yearly basis. Okay. And you'll see on this chart, there isn't anything beyond age 70. Now, that does not mean there isn't plenty of life to be had after age 70, okay? Not saying that. But as it relates to your Social Security benefit, those credits stop accruing at age 70. So if you're going to wait to file for benefits, there's no advantage in waiting beyond age 70, okay? Because that's going to be where your maximum benefit amount locks in at. So you can see on this chart, you have some options, right? Along this continuum from age 62 all the way through 70, right? So what you choose to do may be different than what your spouse chooses to do. You know, and that's quite all right, right? Or a family friend, or, you know, whatever. Okay, so I know I see some things here in the chat. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, good. No questions there. Just checking on the slides. Okay. So that kind of answers that $1 million question, right? When you should start receiving benefits. These are some things you want to keep in mind as it relates to your age and the benefit amount that you lock in at. On this slide, what we're taking a look at is the relationship between your date of birth and how that determines your full retirement age, right? So those first two columns of this chart are showing where you may fall on your date of birth. I don't need any testimonials tonight. It's quite all right. I'm not asking for your information, right? But you can see where you fall along the continuum. Generally speaking, full retirement age is somewhere between 66 and 67, right, for most individuals right now. And if you filed, the last column of the chart here is if you filed at the earliest point in time, which is still age 62 for everyone, right? It shows how much your benefits would be reduced if you filed at the earliest point in time. Okay, so you see that reduction factor changes a little bit based on your full retirement age. So now you're probably thinking, you're referencing maybe some of the information on your Social Security statement. You're thinking about different scenarios. You know, what if I work a couple more years and I make X number of dollars? You know, what if I retire at 63 in 8 months? What if I retire at 67 in 10 months? You know, you're wanting to get more specific estimates than what's on your Social Security statement. We've got you covered, right? We have some great online, easy to use calculators. Again, we design these so that the public can use them, right? You don't have to be an accountant to use our online tools. And so you can really play around with some of those different scenarios, right? And get a better understanding of what your benefits could look like at various points in time. Okay, so we encourage you to check those out. Another thing I like to say when I talk about our, this is kind of the first part where I talk about our online services to some degree. There is no charge, right, for using any of our online services. So if you are on a site where they are trying to charge you, that's not our site. I'm not saying you may want their services for something else, but you do not need to pay to do anything that I'm talking to you about today, okay? As long as you're on our page, right? So from a matter of scam and safety awareness, we like to share that. Okay, so we kind of set the stage for how you become entitled to benefits and some things that you may want to, kind of look at when making that decision. But one thing you should know is that whenever you become entitled to benefits, we're always interested in anyone else who might be eligible for benefits on the record, right? So when you file your application, we're going to ask, do you have any minor children, right? So that would be younger than 18 or younger than 19 if still in high school. We're going to ask, do you have any disabled adult children? And that would be any children that were found to be disabled before the age of 22. We're also going to ask if you are currently married and if you were previously married and how those marriages ended, right? And we're going to spend a little time talking about what spouse benefits mean here today. Okay, so you could potentially be eligible, or your spouse could potentially be eligible for a benefit on your record. And there are some requirements, right? The age requirement, so they have to be at least age 62 or caring for a minor or disabled child. And if it is a divorced spouse, there are some additional requirements. You have to be unmarried at the time that you're filing for the divorced spouse benefit. The marriage has to have lasted at least 10 years. And your ex-spouse, meaning the person upon whose record you're filing for benefits, must be of age, so age 62, or entitled to disability benefits. Okay, so I don't share all these details for you to remember them verbatim, right? The goal here is to remember these basic categories, right? Know that others may be entitled to benefits on your record. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this concept of spouse benefits. Okay? When we're talking about spouse benefits, right, this means you could be entitled to a benefit on your spouse's record. And how much could you receive, right? The most you could receive is 50% of your spouse's unreduced benefit. And when I use the word unreduced, I'm talking about benefits due at full retirement age. Okay. Now, there's a lot of definitions on this slide. We've got a great example on the next slide that with numbers, if it's a scenario, it makes it come to life a little more. Okay, so hang in there with me, right? If you file for a benefit before your full retirement age, we already kind of understand there's usually some sort of a reduction, right? Like we saw on the chart earlier. One exception to that for spouse benefits is if you're caring for a minor or disabled child, then there would not be a reduction. If you're due a spouse benefit, we're going to combine it with the retirement benefit that you're due on your own record. You're going to see that in the example on the next slide. Whatever you get as a spouse, this is a question that we get often, I don't want to take anything away from my spouse, right? So you won't, that's okay. It's an additional benefit that we would pay you. Doesn't reduce what your spouse would receive. And the benefit is only payable when your spouse files for benefits, right? So if they're filing at the same time as you for their own benefit, or if they've already started, right? That would be when you could receive this spouse benefit. So enough with these definitions. Let's take a look at a scenario, right? I like to think the light bulbs start to really go off when we look at some numbers in a scenario. So in this example, we have me and my husband, Joel, okay? And this is kind of a window into a world of a claims specialist right here. So you're getting some good information here, okay? This is what any claims specialist looks at when we get a claim for benefits, right? And so we're looking at benefits due at full retirement age. You see the acronym FRA here on this, that's what that means, full retirement age, okay? And so let's take a look at my record, okay? In this example, my benefit at my full retirement age is $2,000. And so we automatically know from that that the most that a spouse could receive on my record is $1,000, right? Because it's 50% of 2,000. Now we take a look at Joel's record. Joel is due a benefit of $800 at his full retirement age. So because Joel's benefit on his own record is less than the maximum spouse benefit payable on mine, he's going to be due an additional spouse benefit. How much? Well, simple math, right? Simple arithmetic. 1,000 minus 800 equals 200. That would be the maximum spouse benefit payable. And how would that work, right? Well, Joel files an application, says, hey, I want my benefits to begin. We'll pay him $800 or some fraction thereof if he's filing early. And then we'll also pay him a spouse benefit of $200 or some fraction thereof, as long as I've already started getting benefits or if I'm filing at the same time as he is. Okay? And we'll combine the benefit, right? So he'll get 800 plus 200 all together, right? So he'll get more per month than if it was just a benefit on his own record. Now, in the second example, you'll see that Joel is not going to be due anything as a spouse because his maximum benefit amount exceeds the maximum spouse benefit payable on my record. And so usually when I share this slide with numbers and an actual scenario, people start to say, oh yeah, I see what's going on here. And you may already have an idea whether you or your spouse might be due an additional benefit, off of the other's record. We do have a spouse benefits calculator on our website that you can use for that purpose as well. Okay. So up until now, everything I've talked about is as if everyone is alive, right? Notice I don't think I've used the word survivor yet, okay? So now we're gonna talk about survivor benefits briefly. And we're gonna see a slide that's very similar to one that we just saw before, right? Those categories of individuals that we're interested in when you file for retirement benefits, well, if you pass away, we wanna know if any of those individuals exist as well, okay? So any minor or disabled children, and any surviving spouses, whether it was a current surviving spouse or a divorced, right, surviving spouse. This, when we talk about survivor benefits, this is what can open kind of another window, another benefit possibility, especially when we're in this widow and divorced widower category. So let's look at that. Of course, if you wait until your full retirement age, right, you can receive the maximum survivor benefit, but you could receive reduced benefits as early as age 60, right? So that's a full 2 years earlier than a retirement benefit on your own record. If you're a disabled widow, you could receive benefits as early as age 50. And then similarly, at any age if you're caring for a minor or disabled child. All right. Okay, so let's do a little comparison contrast here between the benefits, right? On this slide, on the left-hand side, everyone is alive. On the right-hand side, somebody left us, okay? While everyone is alive, age 62, and then age 60 or age 50 if disabled for surviving spouse benefit. The most you can get while everyone is alive is 50%, like we saw in the example, right? But a survivor benefit is always higher, right? It's a higher payout. That's similar to, I think, anything in the insurance world, right? Usually, okay? And then, of course, the longer you wait to your full retirement age, the higher your benefit amount would be. Okay, so we like to bring this up in our presentations because, one, as you're trying to figure out what the rest of life is going to look like, right? It's important to kind of know what your options are, right? And survivor benefits, I think sometimes our focus is very much on retirement. We forget about that kind of survivor benefit piece. Okay. So when I started the presentation today and I showed you the agenda, I gave you two acronyms that I was like, I'm not going to tell you what they are. We're going to talk about them here momentarily. Okay. So for this slide and the next one, we are entering a space where that only applies to people who have worked somewhere where they did not pay into Social Security. Okay. Could be a teacher, could be a firefighter, could be a police officer. Okay. We're only talking about people who have worked somewhere where they did not pay into Social Security and they are due a pension from that work. Okay. We call that here in Social Security, we call that work non-covered work, right? Meaning you did not pay into Social Security when you were working for that employer. So if you become entitled to a pension based on non-covered work, WEP, or the windfall elimination provision, may reduce what we can pay you from Social Security, right? And I bring this up in our presentations because sometimes people, all they do is they look at their Social Security statement and they start making decisions based on the numbers on that Social Security statement, right? And in most cases, that's fine. But if you're going to get a pension from non-covered work, you need to know that what you're going to get from Social Security will likely be less than what is shown on that Social Security statement. Okay. And that's because based on this provision, we have to take into account if you, I like to use the analogy, if you played in another sandbox, right? If you were doing work outside of Social Security, that's fine. We have to take that pension into account, and we have to compare it with how many years of Social Security earnings you have. If this might affect you, no fear, don't worry. There is a calculator that we have on our website you can use to figure out how much WEP, or if it will impact how much you get from Social Security. Okay. So WEP is what could affect what you're due based on your own earnings record, right? Okay, based on your earnings. On the other side of the coin is government pension offset. Government pension offset could affect what you receive as a spouse or a widow. Again, this would only apply if you're entitled to a pension that's based on work not covered by Social Security. So if you work somewhere where you did not pay into Social Security, or if your spouse worked somewhere where they did not pay into Social Security and you are getting a benefit from that work, right? You're getting some type of pension or some type of monthly payment or something, that could reduce what you may be due from Social Security as a spouse or a widow. Okay, so we have a calculator for that as well on our website. It's a pretty simple, this one's a little easier. We take into account 2/3 of your non-covered pension. So it's a little bit of it's a different calculation than WEP. If you and your spouse have always worked and paid into Social Security, you can scratch everything I just said on this slide and the previous one. You don't have to worry about that. Make some space in your brain, okay? But we like to share this because we know, a variety of people have different work experiences, right? We don't want them to be caught off guard. Now, let's talk about another topic. When I opened, I said, if you want to work and receive benefits, right? That's something you need to be aware of because there are earnings limits that are in place as long as you are under your full retirement age, right? And so this could be a reason why you maybe choose to delay receiving your benefits, depending on how much you're going to make from work. So here in 2024, you'll see the limits here shown on the slide. If you're under your full retirement age, you have a lower earnings limit. So we're talking folks who are 60, 61, 62, 63. Okay, the limit is currently $22,320 in gross earnings for the year. If you make that amount or less, you're fine. You can receive your Social Security benefit without any kind of reduction. If you make over that amount, you need to pay us back $1 for every $2 that you earn over the amount. Okay, so we don't count all of the earnings above the limit against you, just half. So the limit gets higher in the year that you reach your full retirement age, right? This year it's $59,520 in gross earnings. And that limit only applies to you until the month that you reach your full retirement age. Right? If you make over the limit, you only have to pay us back $1 for every $3. And then in the month you reach your full retirement age and beyond, there's no limit. So you can, sometimes when I was taking claims in one of our local offices, I'd say, now's the time to go out and make your millions. And of course, I would get a variety of responses to that question, right? I say it in jest, but hey, I don't ever want to limit someone's potential either, right? So there's no limit once you reach your full retirement age. Okay, so if you want to play around with some different scenarios, like I was saying earlier, if you want to say, if I make this much over the limit, how much would I have to pay back? You might use that information to determine if it's the right time for you to file for benefits. Okay. What counts towards those limits that we just looked at? We are looking at earnings, right? So what's reported as gross wages from employment. So if you're working for an employer, what's reported in box 3 on your W-2, right? Social Security earnings. And then if you're self-employed, what is ultimately reported as net earnings from self-employment on your federal tax return. Right? That's the information that's what we're looking at. We're not considering rental income. We're not considering, other pensions or other types of income that you get. And in some cases, when someone retires, you might get a special payment from your employer, some type of sick or vacation payout, some type of severance or bonus, maybe for work that you did before you started getting benefits. Usually those special payments do not count towards those limits that we just looked at, but you do have to submit proof of those special payments to us so that we can properly annotate your benefit record. Okay. When you go on our website, there's a search kind of bubble box right in the top right corner area. If you type in special payments, our publication will come up that goes into more detail about that and how you can report that, those special payments to us. Last but not least, we'll talk about Uncle Sam's favorite topic, taxation, right? I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning, and sometimes we get the question, will my Social Security benefits be taxed? The answer to this question is also, it depends, but with a side of most likely or probable, right? And I'm going to explain what that means here. First and foremost, the IRS is looking at your combined income when determining if your Social Security benefits will be taxed. And your combined income consists of whatever you're making from work, whether it's just you or you and your spouse, so your adjusted gross income, any non-taxable interest income, so that could be investment, it could be, tax professional, I don't know what all goes into that category, right? And then if you have started receiving Social Security benefits, only half of the total amount you receive in the year are accounted towards your combined income. So just by looking at this equation alone, it's pretty easy to see that if you're able to minimize your income in any one of these categories, you may in turn be able to minimize your overall tax liability. Okay. So that may be why you say, you know what, I'm going to wait until me and my spouse stop working, right, before we start our Social Security benefits, right? Okay. Could be, right? Now, obviously, Social Security is no tax professional. We are not here to give tax advice, but there are some publications that the IRS has on their website, their publication 554 and publication 915. Right? Those are some great guides that we recommend folks check out when they're wanting to learn more about taxation. If your combined income that we just looked at on the previous slide falls within these categories based on your filing status, then you will be responsible for paying federal income tax on a portion of your benefits. So what does that mean? If you're filing as an individual and your combined income is at least $25,000 or more, and if you're filing jointly and your combined income is at least $32,000 or more. This is why I said there's a side of most likely and probably, because these income thresholds, you know, have not changed for decades, right? So they have not adjusted for inflation, right? So these amounts, each year, more and more people easily fall into these categories. Right. So yeah, that's why there's a heavy side dose of most likely and probably. Okay. So I'm going to pause there for a second. The Medicare slide, as I promised, I've covered a lot of information. I feel like a good breather, a good moment for me to sip on some water. It's a good time for you to see if there might be any questions out there about anything that I've covered thus far. And no question is a dumb question. So please speak up or type in the chat, whatever you need to do.
So if you'd
My
like to
name is
ask a
Christy, and I
question-
have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Christy.
Thank you. Early in your presentation, you said something about one credit equals $1,730, and you earn a maximum of 4 credits a year. And if you earn more money than that, then the rest of the money is credited to you.
Christy, I think the last part of I think even most important part of your question kind of cut out there at the end. Can you repeat what you said about?
Okay. What I was saying is, you mentioned that you get a maximum of 4 credits a year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And after you reach the maximum, if you earn more money than that, I thought you said the money goes to your account or to my account. And I don't know what that means.
I understand. Yes. Gotcha. I understand your question, right? So your earnings each year, right? Your employer reports your earnings to us, right? As long as you're paying into Social Security, right? And any earnings that you have above those basic amounts that we looked at on that slide is what increases your benefit amount, right? So when we're talking about Social Security, it's not like a private retirement account, right? We're calculating your benefit amount based on the earnings that have been reported to us, right? And so when it comes to pay, go ahead.
If I only make that $6,000 and something dollars, that goes to the general Social Security fund and nothing goes to my personal account.
No.
Got it.
No, that's not what I'm saying. No. Those earnings are you still receive credit for those earnings. It's just that your benefit amount will not be as high as someone who has earned over those basic amounts.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Thank you.
You got it.
It does.
Any other questions out there tonight?
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So my father was a federal employee and he did not pay into Social Security at all, ever. And so he has since passed. So was there something that would my mom get anything after, because he never paid into it or not? Or is that where
Right.
that government pension offset comes in?
It could, right? It could. So there may have been a time when your father did pay into Social Security, maybe early on in his life, like, I say like the soda shop job
Oh,
or
right.
the,
Yep, yep, yep,
you
yep,
know,
yep, yep.
so those earnings may not have been enough, right? He may not have had 10 years of earnings, right? Like we saw in the earlier slide, to be insured for benefits, right? But if he did, right, if he had worked at least enough to be minimally insured, there could have been possibly a benefit payable to your mother, right? So it likely may have been reduced by government pension offset that that you were mentioning there. But yeah, so just because someone does have a non-covered pension doesn't mean there isn't any kind of a benefit payable. It just depends on how many years of Social Security earnings, right? Maybe that they did have, right? So yeah, I mean, that's about as detailed as I can answer that question without actually looking at their benefit records, right? To kind of see, what may be in that situation.
So is that an automatic, or do you have to apply for something like that? Or,
You
like
do
so my
have to
dad was a
apply.
grave digger when he was in college.
Sure, sure,
So I'm
sure.
sure he did pay in at that time in his life,
At that time, yeah.
but you have to apply for that. Is that
You do
what
have to
you
apply.
do? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is nothing automatic unless perchance you are already receiving benefits from us in some form, and we are able to identify other entitlements, right? But you do have to file.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I see a question here in the chat. And Sharon, I meant to say in the beginning, I love that stained glass that you had in the background there. I'm not sure if you're still on camera, but I really loved that earlier. Sharon says some of the earnings on her record seem lower than she recalls. She no longer has tax records from those early years, and an employer no longer exists. Yeah, there probably is no recourse at this point for that, because you would need to show proof of those earnings. If there was any correction needed, you would need to show that to us. But I know in assisting individuals in the past with those kinds of concerns, it was often through discussion, right, about their employment. We were able to identify some of the reasons maybe why they were paid less. Maybe there were certain deductions that were coming out of their check that they forgot about, or there were some other types of things particular to that employment, So maybe that was the circumstance, for that employment. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Let's see. Any other questions? I don't see anything else maybe in the chat. Oh, yeah. Sharon said, thank you. Wonderful. I don't see anything else in the chat. No one else is speaking up. So let's keep this train going here. Okay. So we're moving into the next car of the train, so to say, and we're going to talk about Medicare, right? And so most of you know that Medicare is the nation's federal health insurance program. And it got its start back in 1965, right? And at that time, it consisted of just two parts. You see that shown here on the slide as original Medicare in the top left-hand corner, right? Original Medicare is Part A, hospital insurance. It's free for folks who've worked and paid Social Security, Medicare taxes. And Then there's also Part B, medical insurance, right? Covers you pretty much for routine medical care, doctor's visits, specialists, etc. Part B has a monthly premium associated with it, whereas Part A is free. Uh-oh, I clicked. That's not what I meant to do. Hold on here just a second. I got excited. I get excited when I move into the Medicare topic here, okay? So that is original Medicare, right? Part A and Part B. But since then, Medicare has expanded, and there are now Medicare Advantage plans that you can enroll in. They include original Medicare, Parts A and B, and usually include a prescription drug plan, Part D, along with extra benefits like vision, hearing, dental, and more. But as I say in all of my presentations, don't let the name Advantage fool you. It may not be an advantage for you to enroll in one of these plans, okay? That's where you have to do some research. I know AARP has some good resources on this. I'm sure Mirowitz probably does too. And I'm gonna share some other resources with you as well so you can know what to do when it comes to your Medicare options. If you don't choose to enroll in an Advantage plan, then you can add a prescription drug plan. You can also add supplemental insurance coverage, also known as Medigap plans, right? So the goal there, they're meant to lower your out-of-pocket costs. But you still want to do your research and make sure you make some choices that are right for you. When you're wanting to learn more about each part of Medicare, how much it covers, what it covers, Medicare.gov is the place to go for that information, okay? When it comes to the premiums for Part B, okay, there's a lot of details on this chart, and that's kind of intentional. Here in that middle column, the first cell in that middle column shows the standard premium for Part B. Here in 2024, that's $174.70 a month. And what the rest of this chart shows is how individuals who have a income above certain levels, right? So above $103,000 a year for an individual, above $206,000 for a married couple, they will have to pay more for their Part B and Part D premium. Right? So this doesn't necessarily affect everyone, but we like to mention it in our slides so that people are aware, right? That they may have to pay more for their Part B and Part D premium, okay, based on their income. Okay. So Social Security is involved with Medicare in the sense that we determine who is eligible for Medicare, Parts A and B, and we get them enrolled in Parts A and B. Okay. So to become eligible for Medicare, most folks become eligible when they turn age 65, right? But others may become entitled earlier than that if they've been entitled to disability benefits for 24 months or more, or if they've been diagnosed with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, or some type of permanent kidney failure that requires dialysis or transplant. Okay. So for the purposes of our discussion today, we're going to focus on age 65, eligibility around age 65. Okay, and you have some filing options, right? Sometimes when we do these presentations, we get questions from people. Well, I heard that no matter what, you have to file for Medicare at 65. No ifs, ands, buts about it. That is not true. You have some options, okay? So we like to make sure people know what their options are. Okay, so Social Security handles getting you enrolled in Parts A and B. Unless you work for the Railroad Board, then you might, they would be taking care of you for enrollment. And you've got some options here, okay? You could say, I just want to file for Medicare right now, meaning Parts A and B, and I'm going to wait to get my cash benefits, right, whether it be retirement or survivor benefits at a later point in time. You could also say, you know, I'm just going to get Part A right now because, well, it's free, additional coverage if I have to go into the hospital. And I'm going to wait to get Part B when I no longer have coverage through my employer or when I stop working, whichever happens first. Okay, now there are 3 enrollment periods that determine when you can file for Medicare. Okay, and we like to cover these in our presentations. Again, this is part of understanding your options, right? So at the top of the screen is the initial enrollment period. Makes sense. 3 months before your 65th birthday, and it goes all the way through the 3 months after that birthday. If you don't choose to enroll during your initial enrollment period, then you have 2 other options to enroll. The special enrollment period is for folks who can say, hi, I'm older than age 65, and I can show proof that I have had employer group health coverage based on active current employment, whether it's my own or through a spouse. As long as you can show that you have maintained that coverage from at least age 65 forward, you can enroll in Medicare Part B without any kind of penalty or delay. If you cannot show that proof, then you would have to wait until the general enrollment period, which is every year from January through March. Okay. We're going to look at each one of these enrollment periods here in a little more detail. But before we move forward, if you have an HSA, which stands for a health savings account, the IRS has a rule that says you cannot make contributions to that HSA and be enrolled in Medicare. Now, you could use your HSA monies to pay for your Medicare premiums and things like that. You just can't make contributions to that HSA and be enrolled in Medicare. If you don't have an HSA, you don't have to worry about that. That's a nugget of information you don't have to remember, okay? Let's look at these enrollment periods. The initial enrollment period is pretty straightforward. You enroll in one of the 3 months before you turn 65. Your coverage will be effective the month you turn 65. You enroll in one of the 3 months, in the month you turn 65 or one of the 3 months after, then your coverage will be effective the month after you sign up. Pretty straightforward, right? Pretty logical. The special enrollment period is where there is some variance, right? Because it is dependent upon your ability to show that you've had that employer-based group health coverage, right? And it's been on through active or current employment. So it's flexible in that sense, right? You have an 8-month period to enroll. And it starts whenever the employment stops or the coverage stops, whichever happens first. So coverage based on retiree status or COBRA coverage does not count for this special enrollment period, right? So the clock starts ticking, right, on your time to enroll when the employment stops or the coverage stops, whichever happens first. If it's been more than 8 months since the employment stopped or the coverage stopped, then you would have to wait until the general enrollment period to enroll. And this is where a penalty could come into play. If you've gone without Medicare for 12 months or more, so it's been more than 12 months since you stopped working or had coverage, through work, right? You'll pay 10% for every 12 months. And your premium will be 10% higher for every 12 months that you went without Medicare when you should have had it. Right? So we like to share this information about Medicare to dispel some of those fears and myths out there that I kind of started out with, right? No, you do have options, but you got to understand your options so you don't say, oh, well, I'm healthy now, I don't need Medicare. And then 3-4 years later, you have a major surgery and then you're upset because you have to pay more, right? Sheila, you're nodding your head because I'm sure you have heard situations like that before, right? Yeah, right. And Joan, I do see your question about filing, like how to file, and we'll talk about that here shortly. Okay. Here's some other things to think about when it comes to Medicare. Kind of similar to the question you asked earlier, Sheila, about, is anything automatic, right? No, you do have to file an application if you want Medicare. The only exception to that would be if you started receiving benefits from us before age 65, right? Then we'll automatically enroll you in Parts A and B. You could still refuse Part B if you had coverage, other coverage. But you could not refuse Part A. Part A is there, right? It's part of it, right? Now, the last two bullet points here kind of refer back to that HSA situation. If you're filing for Medicare after age 65, your Part A coverage would be retroactive up to 6 months, okay? So that's really only an issue for folks who have an HSA, right? They need to stop those contributions. If you don't have an HSA, don't worry about it, okay, in that regard. We also get questions about how would you pay your premiums, right? Well, if you haven't started receiving benefits yet from Social Security, then Medicare will send you a bill with payment options. When you start receiving benefits, we'll withhold your Part B premiums automatically from them. And you may choose to have premium withholding for your Part D plan, the prescription drug plan as well. Okay, so you have some options there, and they usually share all of that once you get enrolled. So again, this is kind of a snapshot of the Medicare website. It's a great way to get on there and learn more about each part of Medicare, how much it covers, what it covers, right? Gives you the basics. And a great resource that I'm sure Sheila and maybe even Laura are familiar with are SHIP, right? That's another word we have to be very careful in how we pronounce it, right? SHIP, right? It's the State Health Insurance Assistance Program, right? This is a federally mandated, I don't want to say organization, but the federal government has mandated, there we go, that all states provide unbiased and free counseling to individuals regarding all kind of Medicare choices. And so each state has a SHIP. It may not be called that, right? So depending on where you may end up living, it may go by a different name, but they are there to provide you free personalized counseling to help you understand what your options are as it relates to Medicare. So they can answer those questions about coverage, about how much would be my deductible? Maybe you have an appeal that you want to file, because something that you had done wasn't covered. They can really help you navigate those things, right? So visiting shiphealth.org is a great way to figure out, okay, where is the SHIP in my state, right? And how to contact them. Okay, so that's a great resource. And then kind of leading into that is a snapshot of our website. So hopefully most of you have been on our website before to maybe look for information, but if you haven't, here's just kind of a snapshot. We're not going to go through all of it, all of our kind of web things on our website here today, but hopefully what jumps out at you is the words prepare, apply, and manage, right? Because that's really what we want folks to be able to do when they visit us online, right? As it relates to your benefits. So some things to highlight, of course, at the top, there are some great drop-down menus. So when you're wanting to learn more about all of our benefits, retirement, survivor, disability, Medicare, maybe you need to update your card or your earnings record to some degree, you can get more information on that. That lovely search window that I referred to earlier there, that can kind of be your ticket if you're not quite sure what to search for or look for. You can use a keyword there and get some initial information. But we encourage you to explore our website, right, and become more familiar with how to access information there. We also encourage you to create or sign into your My Social Security account if you have not done that lately, right? It's a great way for you to have instant access to your information, so you're not dependent upon calling us, or visiting your local office and waiting in line. We know people do have to visit us sometimes or contact us, but there are really a lot of things that you can do with us online and have the information like this, as opposed to, we want you to do other fun things with your life, right? And so creating your account is a great way to do that. So if you already have an account, we're going to ask for your existing username and password, and we will probably send some type of activation code your way, right? If you had an account that was created before September 2021, then your username and password would be sufficient. If you create an account after that, you'll be asked to sign in using a login.gov or ID Me credential, right? And so these are third-party identity verification sites that many government agencies are using, right, as part of their way to keep your information safe and to make sure that someone else is not, trying to access your information, right? So if you're creating a new account, you're going to automatically be directed to login.gov to create an account, okay? And then following those steps to create your account there, once you're done, you'll be redirected back to our site. And once you complete that registration process, we'll send you an activation code, similar to probably what you have already through your bank, or through some other place that you may do online business with. So if you're not receiving benefits, the biggest advantage to having your account is getting in there and looking at your Social Security statement, right? Making sure that the earnings that we have posted are correct. Looking at those benefit estimates, and then using our online calculators if you want to get more specific estimates. But you can also get a replacement Social Security card from us online, if you need it, right? You can get a benefit verification letter to show that you're not getting benefits. Sometimes people need to show that, right? And if you filed your application online, you can check the status, of your application, right? When you log into your account, this is a snapshot of what you'll see, especially if you're not receiving benefits. You can immediately access a copy of your statement. We have a retirement ready fact sheet there that you can take a look at. Goes over a lot of the things that I covered today and some other things to consider, right? And then there's some basic information down there about your eligibility and earnings, right? So this person definitely has the 40 work credits that they need to receive benefits. And then you've got an opportunity to look at your full earnings record, right? And how we calculated your benefits, right? To get to that. This is your Social Security statement, right? It is newly redesigned in the past couple of years here. Definitely shorter than the statement maybe that you remember receiving each year from us. You can easily focus on the basics. So looking at your earnings record, you get to see that snapshot. And then you also get to look at, it went too quick. Stop it, David. Oh, I got excited again. See, there's certain parts of the slide here I get too excited. But on the statement here, you get to see a nice, chart of your benefit estimates. We've got those certain sections that talk about kind of each type of benefit, and important things that you need to know about eligibility. So a lot of the things that I covered today, and links to other portions of our website that do a deeper dive. That fact sheet that I mentioned, when you go into your statement, it's kind of a snapshot of it, right? So you can already see from just the headings of each title, like Social Security will be there when you retire, right? We talk about the future of Social Security in it because we know a lot of people are concerned about that. But we also just talk about the basics, right? How long will your benefits last? Are there benefits for others in your family, right? And so when it comes time to file for benefits, you can file online. You can file online for retirement, spouse, disability, or just Medicare, right? So I think someone was asking about how to file. I think Joan was asking earlier about how to file for benefits, right? You can do it online with us. The Medicare application takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and the retirement application takes about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. That's usually quicker than it would be to call us, wait to speak to a representative, and then wait to see how soon an appointment would be available in one of your local offices, right? So right now, appointment availability varies according to office, but usually the first available appointment is not until maybe 20 to 30 days out, right? So if time is of the essence for you, and even if you want somebody to kind of help you with the online application, that's okay, right? You don't have to do it all by yourself. I always say, you know, we all need a little help from our friends sometimes, right? So that's quite all right, right? So we want you to choose whatever option is most advantageous for you, right? If you need to do an appointment with us over the phone or in the office, we will do our best to accommodate you as quickly as possible. And if you're wanting to learn more about our benefits and online services, here in our Regional Public Affairs Office, we offer webinars to the general public. We actually have one coming up on Wednesday. That's retirement and survivor Medicare focused. I do some webinars on disability benefits too. So if you have individuals who may want to learn more about that, please feel free to share the link there, ssa.gov, KC webinars with individuals, or use that QR code and you can take a look at our website there. So please feel free to share that with individuals. A shameless plug to follow us on social media. We post good content. We won't post stuff that is silly. Some of the comments on social media might be a little colorful, right? But our content is very factual and usually helpful. And we've got some cool videos on YouTube as well about our programs and services. Last but not least, mymoney.gov is a federal website that's designed to educate the American public about various financial topics. So nobody's going to try to sell you anything on there, you know, but it's a great way if you just want to kind of increase your financial, you know, awareness and literacy about things. And with that, we have arrived at the end of my slide deck. So I will stop sharing so that we can all come virtually together, right, and see what other questions there may be out there. Oh, thank you for that feedback, Joan. Joan said she was happy with what happened today. So thank you, Joan.
So David, I have, same comment, wonderful presentation. Two things. One, if you're willing to share your slides, send them to me and then I can send them back out to everyone who signed up for this program. And I think that might be very helpful if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. And then the second thing I wanted to tell you is that every fall, usually the month of October, we have a program with SHIP. Wilma Schmitz is the speaker, and she does a wonderful job.
I love Wilma.
Yeah,
Wilma's
everybody
good
loves
people.
Wilma. That's right. So I'm going to put a shameless plug for Wilma, and it's worth signing up for because I always learn something every year.
Yep,
That's
I
great.
adore Wilma. One of the first people I met when I started with AARP, so I adore her. Yeah,
she's great people. And you said in October, right? It's when that occurs.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for the feedback, everyone. You know, it's always a challenge when we do presentations because we got to share a lot of information. You know, it's not the most colorful or exciting information. So it's like, how do you make Social Security come alive? You know, so years of doing this, but also years of, you know, answering questions from people on the front line, taking claims, you know, working with people at some of the most critical times in their life. I use all of that when I do these presentations, trust me, you know, to make things come alive and to make it meaningful. So thank you. I never tire of doing it. I love it. I'm like, good. I'm sharing information so that people can feel more at ease about what it is that they need to do as it relates to Social Security. So
So speaking of being at ease, there's a lot in the media these days and elsewhere about the viability or the lifespan of Social Security. And you very lightly said it will be there for you. And so maybe to help people, maybe dispel the myth. I mean, because I don't think a lot of people even understand how it's funded, and what is its the probability for, because there are probably lots of people on here who are not even drawing yet.
Sure. Right,
And
right. Same here.
right.
Right.
So, we want those years to be good and have access to that. So what do you say when
Right.
people say it won't be there when I get that age?
Right. So I kind of answered that question in two parts, right? And I mentioned a little bit of it earlier, but the first part is one, right? Social Security is not your private like 401k retirement program, right? So, when it comes time for you to file for your benefits, when we're calculating your benefits, of course, we covered that earlier, right? We're looking at the earnings that are posted to your records. We index them. We're looking at the highest 35 earnings years, right? That's what we're doing to tell you how much we can pay you. When it comes time for us to actually pay you, we are paying you based on the taxes that are being collected right now, right? So all of us who are working and paying Social Security taxes, we are responsible, right? Our taxes are going towards those who are receiving benefits right now, right? So one, that's how Social Security works, right? From a kind of a very fundamental level. That has been fine for many, many years, right? And there have been changes to Social Security over the years to keep that intact, so to say, to make sure that the taxes coming in are sufficient to cover the benefits going out, right? And so there are Social Security trust funds that were established to keep things afloat, based on economic changes. And there have been changes over time, right? The change in the full retirement age, the change in benefits being taxed. There have been other things that have been implemented over time, right, to kind of weather the storm. We are at another critical time right now in Social Security's history, which, over 85 years now, it's been around quite a long time. And so we're at another critical point where Congress has to determine, right, what it's going to do with Social Security, right? And so if Congress chooses to not make any changes whatsoever, right, just to keep things as is, Social Security will be able to pay about 80% of benefits due, right, through 2033. 2033 is not that far away, right? Every day it gets closer, right? So it becomes even more of a concern, right? Fortunately, we are still in 2024. We are not in the year 2033 yet, right? So there is time to implement some additional changes to keep Social Security afloat, right? And the reason why we are at that point right now is because there are less people working and paying into Social Security than historically before. And there are more people filing for benefits. Hello, baby boomers, right? So anytime you got just like any system, right? It's like our own personal bank account. Anytime you have less coming in, that means there's less to go out, So fortunately, the trust funds are there to keep things afloat, right? So, the agency is actively engaged with Congress and reviewing proposals and discussing, pros, cons of any kind of approach. So please know that Social Security wants to just pay the right amount to the right person at the right time. That's our goal. That's been our goal for years. And so we plan to do that, right? And we plan to make sure that Congress has up-to-date information, right, as to what would or, potentially would or would not happen based on any kind of a proposal. So hopefully that gives a nice kind of comprehensive view without, getting into the weeds about it, so to say, So that's why we encourage folks to pay attention to what your elected officials are saying or are not saying about Social Security, right? And make sure your voice is heard.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth, because that's what I was going to say. So, if you are concerned, talk with your legislators, let them know, that this is a concern, to you, and you want to ensure that it is going to be there for future generations. And I think that is, when I am at events and I have a 20-something come up to me and say, why should I care about Social Security? You should care, and you can impact it regardless of your age. So
that's right.
And your explanation was nice and smooth and non-confrontational. I loved it. So it's all good.
Yeah, because that's what it's about. Social Security affects all of us at different times and in different ways. And it is the world's largest social insurance program, right? I mean, it's the it's an integral part, of the American experience, so to say. So all the more reason for us to pay attention and to be invested in its future.
Yeah, great. Oh, this has been wonderful. I work in an industry where we talk about it all the time, but, looking at it through a personal lens, shifts it a little bit, and did for me. So I really have enjoyed this. I can't wait to part 2 next week. So
that's right.
Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And as Sheila reminded you, don't forget, next week we have David's coming back to talk about fraud, and Sheila's coming back too. So so we'll have another great presentation. And I also agree with what Sheila said. You can talk about these issues conceptually, but when you start considering the personal ramifications of different decisions and different timelines, it really helps to have this kind of information, this factual timeline to help guide you. So again, thank you very much, David. Thank you, Sheila. And we'll see everybody again next week.
Wonderful. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.